were driving from Mansfield to Cleveland, and me and my brother were on opposite sides of this little beater Honda Civic, just heaving out either side of the car. And they had to, we had to stop at a car wash when we got up there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The car, which is disgusting.
Millie makes songs, hey, I made this one. Jerry builds bikes and they go real fast. They're mental defectives. Welcome to the Mental Defectives podcast, a show where we interview interesting individuals with a focus on addiction and mental health. I'm your host, Milligram. That's Millie if you know me, Mr. Graham if you know me. Joined, as always, by the Herbie Hancock of Harleys, the gearhead with a heart of gold. It's Mr. Jerry with a G.
I'm glad to be here.
And today...
Hold on.
Holding.
Like and subscribe if you dig what we do.
Mental Defectives podcast on all your social media. We are there because today we've got a very special guest. He's a sober social worker who's on more boards than Tony Hawk. You can catch him at the Cup of Purpose Recovery Cafe. It's Mr. Jeff. Jeff, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing good. Appreciate you coming on, sir. Jeff, where are you from?
Born in Butler, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes south of Mansfield.
Okay.
Around where Snow Trails is, if anybody knows.
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
Big fan of Snow Trails.
Possum Run Valley.
Oh, yeah. And then when did you have your first drink?
Like any good self-respecting Appalachian man or boy, I think I was a kid, like a real little kid, and my dad would give me sips. It was probably, I come from a broken family. My parents were divorced when I was 7. And so a couple of years after that, I was going to my dad's house every other weekend. And, his idea of a Friday night dinner was Denny Moore beef stew and Old Milwaukee. So, as
the classiest of dinners.
As a 10, 11, 12-year-old, we would have that, and I would take sips, and it would get to be where me and my older brother would share a whole one. And it was never to the point where I was drunk, but it started out as little sips as a boy, and then it just kept getting more and more. The first time I got drunk was, I think I was about 15, and in the summer we would go to a week-long overnight summer camp when we were kids.
Sure.
And it was from Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon to Sunday morning, or Saturday morning, I'm sorry. And as a kid we'd go for 1 or 2 weeks, but then when I got to be a teenager I could work there, like in the kitchen, like as a counselor in training. So I think I was 15, and I worked there the whole summer. And, when we got off on Saturday afternoons, they would give us we'd go cash our checks. We'd go drop our laundry off at our parents. And then the older the older counselors would have parties, usually on Saturday night. And then we'd go back to work on Sunday morning. And I think it was the last weekend of the camp season. There was a big party. My brother was there. I have an older brother who's 2 years older than me. And that was both of ours really first experience, like binge drinking. And because there was always people there that could buy alcohol. And I had to have been the end of the camp season, because I remember both of us getting really, really drunk and then sick. And then the next morning, a group of us were going to, I think, like a Cleveland baseball game. And so we were driving from Mansfield to Cleveland, and me and my brother were on opposite sides of this little beater Honda Civic, just heaving out either side of the car. And they had to, we had to stop at a car wash when we got up there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The car, which is disgusting. And so that was my first experience. And then, I was not it wasn't like it was something that I did constantly when I was that age. So I don't really remember doing it much during like a typical year, but I always knew during the camp season if I was working there. So I worked there from like the age of 15 to about the age of 20. Every
I knew that's where the drinking was at, so I stayed there for 5 years.
So I would go back there, and I mean, there is looking back on it, there is a pattern to how I used. It was always binge. It was always, there was a cycle to it. So when I was a teenager and then a young adult, I had people in my life that could get me alcohol. And then I had that sort of social outlet where we would work all day, all week, and then have that Saturday night to like blow off steam. And some 22-year-old would get us a shit ton of alcohol, and then we would party at some hotel or motel somewhere. And so that was my summer. And it kind of cycled that way throughout my teenage and then my young adult years.
That never bled into like the school year as a teenager?
I mean, I was such a nerd, and it's so weird. Like, I don't mind being a nerd. I think there are lots of people who are nerds who are addicts, and I'm not being negative about that. But I had a different social life at that summer camp versus in high school. In high
Makes
school,
sense.
I was quiet and shy, and I was the little gay kid, and I was poor. And when we moved to Mansfield, I moved to a suburban area. I mean, we lived in a trailer park in the suburban area, so we were poor. But, we went to a school where I didn't fit in. It was the 80s. So, when you were, I know, it was the 1900s.
Yeah. The amount of gay people we've had on from one stoplight towns through Ohio.
Yeah.
I just feel like I can't imagine what being young in that situation, in that environment.
Yeah. It was not. I came screaming down 71 when I was so I was quiet, shy, not in a really, really party crowd. I just kind of stuck to myself. I wasn't like a bookworm, or I wasn't in the chess club. None of that. I just kept to myself, and I didn't feel like I belonged. But at that camp, for some reason, it was different. I don't know if it's because I grew up going there with the same kids that then were counselors, whereas when I moved to Mansfield, I moved right at a 4th to 5th grade, which is like a really crucial time to when you're developing relationships, and I never just could catch on to the kids there. So didn't do much during the school year. I was afraid of my parents, which I don't think that is always the case with people. I didn't do the wrong thing much, but for some reason, the way it worked at summer camp is I would work there all week, and then I would tell my mom, who I lived with my mom and my stepdad in Mansfield, I would tell, I'm staying with my dad, and he did not give a shit what I did. Or I would say I was staying with my brother as he got older, and they didn't know what I was doing. So that's how it was. I didn't really start going heavy into alcohol or other things until I was 22, 23. So, yeah. Okay,
so you're doing the Saturday night parties at the summer camp, and then what happens after high school?
I graduated in June, and then by Thanksgiving or so, I was working as a grill cook at Ponderosa.
R.I.P. Ponderosa.
So am I allowed to say that on here?
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're no longer around, so go for it. Yeah.
During the school year, I worked at Ponderosa, and then I worked at the camp in the summer. But so I was working as a grill cook. I wanted to go to college. I had started taking classes at the branch campus at OSU up in Mansfield, and I took 2 classes. They were engineering classes because that's what I thought I wanted to be. And I didn't like it. And so I dropped out, and I was just working. Literally within a couple of months, I had a friend who was working at the area hospital up there at the dialysis unit. And she's like, oh, they're looking for dialysis techs. They're looking for aides or assistants and things. And I'm like, how much does it pay? And she told me, and I'm like, I'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I went there. They liked me. I had no medical experience whatsoever, nothing. and they had to teach me how to take temperatures and blood pressures, but basically gave me a job as an aide, and I would like tear down and set up dialysis machines and take temperatures and file and things like that. I usually tell this story to my coworkers when I meet them because this is a kind of like a funny story. I was so not knowledgeable about anything medical that the nurses, I worked night shift, the nurses would haze me. And one time one of the nurses came up to me and she's like, "Jeff, we've run out of fallopian tubes. You're gonna need to go down to the lab and get us some more fallopian tubes."
And you went to look for them, didn't you?
They all laughed at me down there,
my
and then they laughed at me. So, but I say all that to say, so I got a job as an aide, and within a month, they liked me so much they said, "You should be a dialysis tech," which it was again back in it was around 90, and you didn't have to be certified. They trained you on site, and by I think New Year's Day, I was a dialysis tech, a med tech.
Sure.
And so I worked there for about 6 months, maybe 9 months. And then I opened for a company, or I worked for a company, and they had clinics in Columbus. And I transferred down to Columbus from Mansfield as soon as I could, as soon as I was financially and physically ready. And I came down here, and I was 19, maybe. Mm-hmm. And again, didn't do a whole lot. Didn't get a lot of trouble. I wasn't out. So I lived with an uncle, and I went to work and nothing. And then I was working with a woman who I got really close with, and it was around my birthday, around my 22nd birthday. And her brother's birthday was close to mine, and they were like, "Hey, we're going out to a bar for his birthday. You want to tag along?" And it was some bar, it was like the Short North Tavern or someplace like that in the Short North. And we were down there, and they're like, "Hey, this isn't any fun. Do you guys want to go to you want to go to a nightclub?" And they're like trying to figure out. And my friend, she's like, "Oh, I'm going to take you to this place called The Garage," because she knew I was gay as hell. But I wouldn't tell anybody. And so the whole group of them, there was probably a group of 10 of us. We all went to this place called The Garage, which was a relatively famous nightclub for my people downtown. And I was home. As soon as I walked in there, I just was like, "Where has this been my whole life?"
Here it is.
So I left that bar, saying drunk, but saying, I'm out, I'm proud, and I didn't look back. And I don't think I missed a weekend until I was 40.
Wow.
So
That's dedication.
That I was, not just at the Garage, but at any nightclub, I just became one of those people that, back in my day, you had to go out to a dirty, seedy nightclub to make bad choices.
Not from the comfort of your phone, just with a swipe away.
Right.
So that's how, everything sort of escalated from that point. It was, I'm really literally an alcoholic at heart. That was my drug of choice for decades. I just happened to have experimented throughout my 20s and 30s with other things and never really caught on until later. And it sort of escalated really quickly.
As it does.
Yeah, towards the end of my active addiction. So
sure.
But life was sort of set up to for that kind of life. So I had a job that I worked 1:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. It paid well. I could.
Oh, you can drink all night and sleep in all day.
So
you're good.
I would go home, shower, do my thing, go out, drink and do whatever until 3 or 4 in the morning. I would still get a good night's sleep. I'd get up at 1 and roll into work and do it again. So, and I never had to worry about money because I made good money. I didn't have a lot, but I didn't really need for anything. I didn't nobody needed to know that I only had like a mattress and a TV in a bedroom in an apartment that I shared with 4 other people. Because the nightclubs, everybody was kind of equal. So
Sure.
and it was also kind of bingy as well. So, I would go out during the week plenty, but it was always like the weekends that were when I focused all of my energy, So I would use that sort of excuse while I've had a long week at work or I've been under a lot of stress, and I'm going to unload all of that energy, on the weekends. So, but I was, I was out a lot. I was very slutty. So, that was the whole point of my life, was to go out, get drunk, get laid, go to these places, go home, sleep, eat, work, get laid, get drunk, rinse, repeat.
Right.
So, and that worked for me for, until I was, from the age of 22 till about 35 is when that stopped working.
Being slutty or
All of that, yeah.
The Mental Defectives podcast is brought to you by Milligram's new EP, More Is Always Better. 6 electrifying tracks available on all streaming platforms.
Did you have any like consequences in that time, like DUIs or like anything with law enforcement?
Look at that.
Crazy?
How about that?
I
Good for
am
you.
so lucky. I've never spent a day in jail.
Good for
I've
you.
never been pulled over.
Damn.
Wow.
I filed bankruptcy twice.
Well,
So that's a consequence.
that's a consequence.
I went long stretches of time without cars because, I would either not pay the insurance. And like the first time I didn't have a car, I got it repossessed. So it was during one of those cycles where, every ounce of money I used for alcohol or for clothes to go out and be seen and get laid. And
Got to prioritize.
yes.
Absolutely.
So I just thought, it's one of those things where I thought, I can miss one more payment before they worry about it. They're really not going to go through the hassle of taking my car.
They sure do.
Oh, they will.
They sure
will.
do.
They can and they will. Yes.
So one day, I just am walking out to go to work, and my car's not in the parking lot.
Shit.
And I'm like freaking out, and I had to, I called work, and I'm like, somebody stole my car, and they're like, well, just work, call the police. By the time I got to work, I figured out that my car wasn't stolen. And the girl I work with, she's always like, I didn't think it got stolen. So,
The bank stole it.
yeah. And, so consequences, there weren't I didn't have many legal consequences other than the financial consequences of that. And then there was one other time, this is really the last time I sort of just, didn't have a car and then had to sacrifice that way, is that I was driving to work one morning, and it was rainy, and I was at a gas station, and I remember having the conversation in my head because I had stopped paying my car insurance a long time before that, and I'm getting ready to make a left-hand turn onto Neal. It's that little shitty like BP station at Neal and
Oh, yeah. Real pain in the ass.
yeah, and there's always double,
Yes.
there's always parked cars, and I was trying to make a left to go back towards the highway, and I'm telling myself, Jeff, don't pull out in front of somebody, wait, be patient, and whammy, somebody hit me as I was pulling out. It was my fault, and I didn't have insurance, so I had to pay for their damage, and then I lost my license for 90 days is how much they do it. And then my car was totaled, and I had this old beater car, and I didn't get another one. I'm just like, as penance, I just won't have a car. And I was living in the Harrison West down there off the short north, and I was walking to Grant every morning.
Damn.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was too early. The buses didn't run. I had to be there at like 6 a.m.
Damn.
And I walked for probably a year and a half from the short north or that area
Yeah.
back and forth to Grant Park in the middle of the night. In the
Jeez.
evening, never got mugged, never got, I mean, I don't know how it happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing like the work drink club cycle until what age? You were saying like 30?
Until about I want to say I graduated college, because then I was
Okay,
able
yeah.
to go to college too. So I worked, and then I finally decided I wanted to be a social worker. I was either going to be a nurse or a social worker. And I remember telling myself, well, I see these nurses. They come in the same time I do, like 6 a.m, have to work holidays, are always like chain smoking, bitchy, don't like their jobs, bent over a patient.
Yeah.
And then I saw the social worker walk in, at 8:30, always dressed nice, have their own office. So I'm like, I want that. So I went to college to be a social worker, and I graduated around 2005. So that was really when things, for some reason, that's when things started kind of going off the rails, because I was exhausted from going to school full time for years and working full time. And I just kind of expected my life to sort of go, because I had this college
yeah,
degree and I
sure.
was a social worker, and
Yep.
social workers don't get treated like they just went to school for 6 years.
Right.
It didn't like, life didn't sort of open up, and I assume it was some form of clinical depression, because I had worked really, really hard, and it was sort of like wah wah.
Yeah.
Nothing
Right.
really changed.
Yeah.
And alcohol just wasn't doing it for me anymore. And I was living with a roommate who partook of other drugs. And I just decided one night I was going to try it, which I had judged him and other friends of mine that had did coke, but that's what I moved to.
Okay.
About how terrible it was. I did it I judged them and made fun of them for years, and then tried it and was like, where has this been all my
It makes
life?
total sense why you do this.
Why didn't you shake me?
Yeah.
It's crazy that like you could make it through that many years of like nightlife and drinking.
Yeah.
And I'm sure coke is not a strange thing to see in those places. And then all this, it's just crazy to me that
Well, I'm
how many times you
pretty
must have been
sure-
exposed or offered coke before in a drunken state before you were like, yeah, I'll try it.
I'm pretty sure I did it.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure I've done. I've done ecstasy. I've done GHB. I've done weed. I've done most of them in a moment, but for some reason it never clicked.
Oh,
Never stuck. Yeah.
Okay.
So
That makes sense.
But for some reason it did then. And,
Cocaine.
yeah, I'm old school. And I, for some reason, wanted to be really broke. So that was about around that time. And so I would have been 34, 35, something like that. And for a good couple of years, I was good.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things were nice. Alcohol and Coke go very well together.
Oh, it's like steak and red wine,
I've
dude.
heard that.
Yes. It's and I mean, I don't have to explain. I don't think that sort of euphoria and the fearlessness and that kind of thing that you feel in early addiction, when, it sort of melts away all of the pain and the trauma and all the things that make me, this neurotic, anxious, riddled mess. Because that's what I am. I don't know why I thought that a stimulant would help my anxiety.
Yeah.
But for some reason it did. So
Sure.
And then I started using, again, very structured, very, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like, it wasn't bingy. It was just sort of like
Regimented almost.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes, regimented.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't do it during the week. It'd always be like, it's a Friday night thing. It's a Saturday night thing. I would go And so, I mean, I was never the kind of person that had it on me all the time, just needed it on the weekends. That changed towards the end a little bit. And that's why that's why I know I sought help, one of the reasons. But because I just couldn't see myself, you know, I'm not the kind of person that can go without electricity. I can't, I can't, you know, everybody has a threshold for pain.
Yeah.
Mine,
Agreed.
when it comes to my disease, is not, you know, not where others lie. So like I don't, I'm not going to be homeless. I'm not going to, I mean, I barely, other than my car's getting repossessed and, you know, here or there letting the cable get shut off. That was the extent of my pain. So, but it, you know, it drained me financially very, very quickly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, and I think I ended up having to file for the second bankruptcy. And, you know, I started sort of living in a way that as a 34, 35, 36-year-old shouldn't, you know, like my account, I was doing check cashing places.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple ones.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Is that common amongst our people?
I believe so.
yeah.
I don't think anyone makes sense
No,
who's a stranger to a
definitely
check
did that.
cashing place.
So, I mean, I was juggling literally. It's so weird. Like on a Friday payday, I was going to one in the Short North and then going to one on Gay Street so that I could sort of juggle them. You know?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I could get money at this one to pay off this
pay
one
off
to have
that-
money.
Yep.
You know, it was just
Oh.
terrible.
I remember those days.
Yeah. And, you know, other than just never having money, not being very reliable, not being connected with my family, you know, those were the kinds of things that were going on in my life at that point in time.
And then what was like the catalyst, I guess, going from like the you know, like only doing coke like Friday and Saturday to like bleeding into like the week?
So, I mean,
I'm just always blown away like when we have like binge drinkers or users on, because that was never I was an all like, if it's Monday morning at 8 a.m. or it's Saturday night at midnight, it makes no difference to me. I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah, I was always on something.
yeah.
Like I was always on something.
So it's always so
Yeah.
interesting to me, like people that can do, you know, like you were saying, like even like drink on a Wednesday, but not do coke till Friday, like crazy to me.
well, it became more like those feelings. Like I was wrestling with the feeling of, oh, I'm going to go to happy hour with my friends on Wednesday, but I don't have something to counter the alcohol, you know? So I was surrounded by people who didn't know what I was doing. There was really I had one friend and my roommate who I used with, that drug of choice. But then I had a great big network of friends that I drank with. And so they didn't necessarily know what I was doing day to day. And I just remember starting to be at a happy hour, going out to dinner and wanting that in order to function, wanting that in order to be social, wanting that in order to tolerate people, because sometimes that was the case too. And, you know, I'd always use that. That's probably more than anything when I got drunk the first time at 15, that's what I remember the most, is that, you know, 9 times out of 10, I'm this quiet, shy, reserved person who always thought in his head, nobody really wants me to be around. I'm no fun. Nobody loves me, that kind of stuff. Alcohol and then Coke took that away. And so when I didn't have that, or when it wasn't working with alcohol anymore, because that's one of the things, like alcohol just wasn't doing that for me anymore. I wasn't able to hide from who I felt I was. You know, then anytime I was out drinking and I didn't have Coke, then everything, I was really self-conscious about who I was, what was going on. And then, you know, I was having trouble interacting with people. So, you know, maybe on a random happy hour or something like that, I would survive without it. But it was getting to the point where I was so excited and happy to have that little baggie that I would go out on a Friday and I would kind of go through the motions for like an hour, and then I would slip out and just go home and start
And just do that. Yeah.
So it started to be more about what I did by myself with it than, and that was another scary thing about it, because it had always been, up until the last couple of years before that, had been a social thing. But it became more of like, you know, for me, it had a component to sex as well, or, you know, either by myself or with people.
Sure.
It sort of enhanced it.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think that's surprising to anybody. So I became more isolated and disconnected from even my social life with it towards the end.
And then what? I guess kind of like what was like the thing that like finally culminated the using? And had you been to treatment at all?
No. And
Anytime
that's
up to
another
this,
thing.
like any exposure to?
Never been to treatment. Never spent a day in treatment. When I decided to quit, I did it cold turkey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
So I think what started to turn the corner, there was a couple of things. You know, even the Coke began to start to not have the same effect. I had to use more of it, and then I didn't have the feelings when I was using it that I had gotten attached to, and then I was racked with guilt and shame about it. So it was like this cycle of, I would go out, get drunk, get some, use, go home, be by myself, isolate, and then wake up the next day and feel terrible about myself because I couldn't control myself, and I was letting down people that I cared about, those kinds of feelings. And so it became that cycle where I remember kind of like in those moments when I felt shameful and embarrassed and sad and guilty, I would go online and start to, you know, research where, you know, 12-step programs were, where do I need treatment? You know, just Google. Am I an addict?
Yeah.
Where do I go?
Spoiler alert! If you ever catch yourself doing that, you're one of us.
Probably are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, mental defectives.
Would you like to advertise on our podcast?
If so, email us at mentaldefectivespodcast@gmail.com.
So we can help you make a lot of money.
A whole lot of money. Were you working as a social worker at this point?
Yeah.
And as a social worker, you're probably suggesting people
My
to go to treatment or
Yeah,
meetings
my
or all different.
situational awareness was completely
Love
fucked,
that.
you know.
Love that.
So, but my excuse is I'm in medical social work, not, you know. So I wasn't.
Yes, of course.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
so, I was dealing with sick old people, not addicts or
Right.
saddies, how I call them, you know, because I have worked in psych, so we call them saddies. But there were times when, you know, I would be like sitting at home and Googling it and knowing I needed help, and so, but then you just quickly sort of go, yeah, I'll be all right. I'm not real. This is not me.
I
I'm
can
really just
handle
going
this.
through a phase.
Right.
Yeah.
I look at me. I keep my job. My lights are on. I'm not stealing from anybody. There's no harm. So I would continue to talk myself out of it. You know, usually the worst days when I felt the most guilty were when I was poor. Broke.
Funny how that works.
And I had to work. But by Thursday or Friday, I'm like, you know what?
I'm
not
okay.
So bad.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
okay.
I can go to that check cashing place and get a little bit of money. So, the other thing, the real catalyst, and you can relate to this a little bit. I got clean for a man. Dan, right?
Yeah.
Shout out Dan,
Shout out
friend
to
of the
Dan.
show.
No, yeah. So I had been mostly single my whole life. You know, I think up until my current relationship, I had been in maybe one for 9 months. You know, it just doesn't work. You know, when you're whoring about and you know you're out in clubs day in and day out, and so I was, let's see, it would have been 2008. I was 37. So it was a couple of years into my using. Even though alcohol, I'd consider post Coke my using.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I met my now husband, and it went really quick. You know, I met him like in August, and by Thanksgiving he's living with me. And I had lived either with roommates who didn't care what I was doing, or I lived by myself, and so there was no one there to like answer to. And so now all of a sudden I have this man who wants to know where my money's going.
Sure.
Wants to know why I left the bar at midnight. I within a very quick period of time I couldn't hide a lot of what I was able to hide from everybody else. Because he's staring me right in the face. You know, and but I did it really good for, I want to say, at least a year and a half. He didn't have any clue.
Oh, wow.
Because, I was like,
Damn.
I don't fall in love. I don't share bank accounts.
Yeah, right.
I don't have to tell you what I'm doing. You do you, I'll be me. So I fought it and fought it and fought it. And we would, me and one of my friends who used with me would come up with really inventive ways to be able to do that without him knowing I was taking large sums of money out. I mean, like, he could see it, but he couldn't tell what I was doing. Like, one weekend, my friend would buy us the stuff, and then I would open up a tab at the bar, and then we would just drink off of the tab. And then I would come home with this like $250 tab, but he had spent that much money and
Yeah.
It's funny how the
tab's
tab's always the exact price of an 8-ball. Interesting how that works.
We were doing that kind of thing, sort of the same thing as the check cashing stuff. We were robbing Peter to snort Paul.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for titling your own episode. Robbing Peter to snort Paul. That's amazing. I love it.
Happy to do that. So I remember the first time he found out, he had suspected, but we had changed phones. So we had got new phones, and he had the old phone of mine, and I hadn't shut it off yet or something. And he was able to get in, and he saw texts from my friend and from my dealer, and so he sort of started putting stuff together. So that's when we found out. It was still probably a year before I got clean. So we fought and broke up and did this and did that for a long time. He put up with a lot of mess for me, I broke up with him. Really, really pretty much as soon as he figured it out. And then, I just went bye.
Done.
I basically,
You got to prioritize your addiction at that point.
I chose my disease. I chose my addiction over him.
Sure.
And we were living together. It was awful, and neither one of us really wanted to be in it. But I was the one who said, okay, it's over. And that lasted for, I think it was like Memorial Day. And then by September, we were sleeping together again and kind of.
Can't stay away.
Yeah. And I don't know why he just didn't run for the hills. He just didn't. And he and I started dating again, but by that time we lived in separate houses. And so he gave us another shot and said, let's just live apart and date for a year. Maybe we moved in too soon together, but I was still actively using and telling him I wasn't. And probably within, I would say a few months before we moved back in together, he was like, hey, I'm abstaining a lot from Coke by then. I'm still just drinking because drinking was never a problem.
Oh,
of course not.
Yeah.
So he was fine with that. And and he's like, hey, I'm going to go to Dayton tonight with my friends. I'm like, oh, yes. I hadn't had anything for like 3 months. And
time to
I'm
get
like,
lit.
oh, he's
Yeah,
gonna be
hell
lit.
yes.
I've got some cash he doesn't know about. And so he left what I thought was for Dayton, and I went out with my friends. We weren't living together. I didn't know. And then I'm at a bar, just blitzed, having a blast, and he walks in.
Oh, shit.
And so I'm like literally staring at him with pupils bigger than I didn't do anything, you know.
Yeah.
So he knew I was lying. He knew I was using. He was pissed. And, you know, the next day was really the end of it, because I remember that conversation pretty well. You know, he's like, I can't do this. You know, you need help. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. So if you want, you know, he basically did what a lot of us need in those situations, which is an ultimatum. And I remember thinking to myself, sitting there that Sunday morning, feeling shameful and guilty that I just am on the edge of this kind of cliff. And I use that metaphor, the cliff metaphor, a lot for, you know, a lot of people, they look at a cliff and that's not their bottom, and they're just like, wah, and they'll, you know, bounce.
Yeah.
Hit
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
I look down and I'm like, that looks painful. I don't know if I've got it in me to deal with that. And so I think that's when I decided either I was going to step away from it, you know, like really sort of turn around, or jump. And I just thought, that'll hurt too much. It's too painful. I can't do that. And so it was like a Sunday that day. I remember, okay, so my sister is also in our community. She's a member of our community. And she had like a week clean time.
Oh, wow.
When I had that moment with TJ, and I woke up the next day and I was worried about it. And I'm like, and now she is not one of those ones that's afraid to jump off that cliff. So she will hit every rock and every branch, and she's, you know, she is, yeah, she's much more hardcore at it than I'll ever be, you know. And I treated her like I read her for filth. I judged her. You know, she was much closer to my parents, and my parents sort of allowed her to do what she did and took care of her kids, and it's that sort of dynamic. And I remember just being horrible about her with my parents and being like, she's gonna suck you dry, you know, she doesn't do anything for kids, just really terrible to her. And then but she's the only person I could think of that would tell me what to do next, because you know, I threw the baggie in the toilet and flushed it, and I'm like, I really just need to do something. And so I called her, and she's like, come to a meeting. I'm going to one later today. And I had tried different meetings and sort of just used them as a, please don't make me go back there. They're not like me. I can't relate to those people. I tried different types of meetings. And each time I used it as leverage to cry and be like, no, honey, I can't go back there. I'm not like those people.
Right.
And so I knew I was familiar with recovery, and I knew how it kind of worked. But she's like, come to me. She was in Mansfield, where I'm from, so I went to a Mansfield meeting.
Oh, look at
Those
that.
bastards don't play. That's like hard.
It's that old school, sit
Oh,
down and
yeah.
shut up type.
Right.
So I went up there, and I just for some reason it clicked, and they like I felt welcomed. I would have never in a million years thought, you know, a meeting in downtown Mansfield with a basically heroin and crystal meth central
Right.
would be a place where I would feel like I could actually listen and absorb, but I did. And just decided really that day that abstinence was what I was going to do, and that whether or not my my boyfriend at the time was going to take me back, I needed to do something. So I just thought I'll drink the Kool-Aid, see how it goes. So that's what I did.
And so no treatment at all? Damn. That's
awesome.
also always surprising to me, like that people can do that. So what's so still a social worker this time. You've gone, and this was the first and only like serious attempt at getting sober, and you got on the first shot.
Yeah, I mean, like there was like a period of about 3 months right before that where I abstained from Coke, but I still drank. And it was October 16th, 2011 was the day I went to that meeting with my little sister, and I've never picked up since.
Hell yeah.
Love that.
What was that early sobriety like?
Well, I didn't like it. It was, well, for one thing, I had always told myself, again, that I'm not like most. And I mean, I'll even pepper in stories now. I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, and I'm always
Appreciate
like, my story doesn't sound like that, or I'm not sure if we'll even have stuff to talk about because of some of your past guests.
Yeah.
So, but the gay thing always threw me off too, because I'm like, I'm never gonna feel comfortable to talk about things that I need to talk about in a room full of truck drivers and felons and thugs and those kind of stuff. And so the meetings I went to for a few weeks in Mansfield, I only went up on Sundays. I went for like one day, and I'm like, and I remember there was a gay meeting. I remember looking on the internet and finding one here in Columbus and thinking, oh, I'm going to go to that, but it's on Saturday night. At that point, I'm like, I just can't see myself giving up on Saturday night to go.
Right.
So I took a few Sundays, went up to with my sister, and started to really enjoy what I was hearing and seeing people like laughing, and that it wasn't like what they show in TV shows and the movies where it's everybody just crying and it's real sullen, and people got along and they had social lives with each other and things like that. And I thought, well, I'm going to give the gay meeting a try. And so I went, and I just have never, again, I was so scared that it was going to be no different at that meeting than it was in a nightclub, that I was going to be judged for being older or not rich enough or not skinny enough or not pretty enough or not fabulous enough. And so I was used to that kind of level of judgment from my peers in my community, and I just assumed it was the same but I had my hopes for it, and so I went, and it was completely the opposite. I've never had anybody feel like I wasn't a part of. They didn't make me feel like I wasn't worthy or good enough or that kind of thing. It's it can be cliquey and people get on your nerves, but it
Sounds like every meeting ever.
Yeah, right. That's a meeting.
Yeah. And so I within 3 weeks to a month, I was helping them open it up. And then I was doing service within a few months in that fellowship. And so it's been it's been my central sort of, can I say home group?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's my home. It's been my home group virtually the whole time. I spent maybe about 6 months away from it for some reason, and I just went back. So I have not missed my Saturday nights.
Got a whole new Saturday night.
Yeah. So, and then it sort of, not only was it fixing, I was starting to repair, myself. It was helping to repair my relationships and my intimate relationship. So somehow I managed to get that man to marry me. I don't know how. So we continued to date after I got clean, moved back in together when our leases were up. And that was in 2012. So we met in 2008, broke up for a year around 2010, and then got back together, in 2011, and then got married in 2015.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's 10 years now.
Yeah, it'll be 10 years in
Coming
December.
up.
Damn.
Yeah, at the end of this year. So.
Hell yeah. And then tell us about the Cup of Purpose Cafe.
So, one of the things I've learned as I've spent more and more time in recovery and clean is that recovery doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all experience. So, like for me, abstinence, a specific sort of program works well for me. Mm-hmm. That's what I like to do. But it doesn't work for everybody. And so I've been meeting people and experiencing different types of recovery. And I was introduced to a woman named Teresa who was looking to open up like a coffee shop or something where people can come together and be part of a community, find a space that they feel comfortable with, give back. And she was originally just wanted to have it be a coffee shop, but she was introduced to this organization called the Recovery Cafe. And it was something that was started 20 years ago in Seattle. And there are a couple in Seattle, and then they sort of created a model and a network where you can open up a branch anywhere. So there's like 70 versions of this Recovery Cafe all over the country. And she took her idea and sort of melded it with the Recovery Cafe.
Cool.
And now we have Cup of Purpose Recovery Cafe, which is like a space, like a safe, inclusive space where people can come together to get like connection, community, and they can find, a haven from any type of trauma, addiction. We have people that have come that are, have been incarcerated, homeless. And so it's just them being able to find a path to helping people like them, being in a place where they feel like they belong. And it's a structured membership-based agency. So you don't have to pay anything to be a member. Just come to a recovery circle once a week, give back to the space, and, be non-judgmental and compassionate. And so we're open 2 days a week right now, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have 3 recovery circles, which they're like group talk. So once you become a member, you pick a recovery circle, and then you attend it every week. You have to just pick one recovery circle, attend a week, and you get together. There's a peer support professional that kind of facilitates it, and you just talk about challenges and successes for the week, and any goals you might have, and you're offered loving feedback from other members in that recovery circle.
Hell yeah.
And then it's open. So Tuesdays it's open from 5:30 to 8:30. Thursdays it's open from 5 to 7:30. And you can come in and socialize, and then do the recovery circle, and then we serve a meal. And then sometimes we play games. Sometimes we have like chair yoga. What?
You have what?
Chair yoga.
Oh, chair yoga.
Yeah, chair yoga.
Okay.
Which is like yoga for people who can't.
Gotcha.
You can sit in a chair and do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so we have workshops and activities and things like that. And so I thought I wanted to talk a little bit about it because I think it's a great space. We're really helping. We're making a difference. We have a couple dozen members, but we're always looking for new members to come, and for people who want to volunteer, donate, be on the board. I'm on the board. There's 5 or 6 of us on the board. We need more people. We need just more exposure within certain communities, like,
The
ones
mental
that
defectives
you-
out there. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So,
I love that. Where's it located?
It's at Westgate United Methodist Church near the Hagen and Broad. So it's like
It's right there.
Oh, you're right in the thick
You're
of it.
right there.
Yeah.
Right there. So we get lots of walk-ins. They're welcome. You can come up to 3 times without committing to be a member, and you can come in and with the member's permission, you can sit in on a recovery circle. You can get a free meal. You can hang out. You can talk. We'll have resources there. We have bus passes to get you back and forth if you need them. So I'm very passionate about it because, again, it's helping people, and it's another opportunity to get another look at recovery that maybe you're not getting what you need from other sources, whether it's treatment, whether it's 12-step, whether it's
Right.
any of the other options you have out there. And one of the things that we've noticed about, we're getting a lot of traffic from treatment centers, people in IOP and stuff, because there's not a lot for them to do once the IOP's over with.
Right.
We're open in the evening, so they
Yeah.
can come by, get a free meal.
Perfect.
So we're partnering with treatment centers in the area too to
Awesome.
offer an option for them to do in the evening when IOPs and stuff are done.
And how long has this been open for?
We've been open for about a year, I would say. But it was closer to the city. It was in Franklinton, but we found a better space. The space is actually the old Free Store underneath the church.
I know where that's at. Yeah.
I do
So
too.
we took that over.
Yeah.
And have cleaned it up a little bit.
No, that's awesome.
Hell yeah.
It's really easy also to learn more about us if you want to see our mission and see who's involved. It's cupofpurpose.org. It's really easy to look us up in the on the internet.
Oh yeah,
Perfect.
And
We'll tag that for sure. Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
drop like a link in the description, all that stuff. So
You can,
cupofpurpose.org.
Have links to volunteer, to donate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, if you want to donate or volunteer, cupofpurpose.org.
Yeah.
I like it. Jeff, what advice would you have for someone getting into something like this? Like you mentioned, like you need board members. Like how do you get involved in some kind of, in like whether it's Cup of Purpose or something similar to that? Like how do you get on the board of an organization like that?
Well, so, I mean, it just happened for me. I just happened to know somebody who knows somebody. So sometimes that's all it takes. But for me, being of service has always been a huge part of how I've been able to sort of fill up my life.
Fill up your cup?
Fill up my
With
cup.
purpose? Too good.
Got
I'm
it.
Too good.
So cheesy. But,
Yeah.
like for me, service has always been. I remember early on somebody telling me, if you're struggling with being bored, if you're struggling with finding something to do, if you're squirrely or white knuckling it, be of service. And then, of course, as a human being, like professionally and personally, I've always been a helping professional. So it sort of suits me. So, if you have a desire to be of service and you have it's not even like you have to have specific skill sets. You just have to be willing to want to help and be fearless. A lot of us on the board right now, we went into it without having a lot of knowledge about how nonprofits work and how fundraising works and marketing and advertising. I'm sure you went through this a little bit, developing your podcast,
Oh, yeah.
knowing how to advertise and market and hit the right audiences. So, but we will try anything. And so partly, this is not something, this is the first time I've ever shared my story in a public forum in any stretch other than just real surface stuff. And so this is me stepping outside of my comfort zone because I am that much more passionate about something like Cup of Purpose, because it's just helped add to the foundation I already have in my recovery from the other programs I've used. So this is a way for me to stay clean, no doubt. I'm getting just as much from it as it's getting from me.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Hell yeah.
What advice would you have for somebody trying to get clean or just freshly, like, you know?
Lord. It is not.
Oh, Lord is right.
It is not. You know, the sky, the clouds don't part, and it doesn't become pretty and beautiful and easy. So you just have to stick with it. I just listened, and I kept surrounding myself with people that I wanted a little chunk of whatever they had. So it was about knowing that what I had before is not what I wanted. So it's easy to sort of to reset and go back to that. But I just knew I didn't want it. And so it's like I have to listen, I have to absorb, I have to want it. So
Hell
I don't know
yeah.
if that's necessarily advice, but
It's good
Makes
shit.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good shit is what it is. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. Cupofpurpose.org. Go check them out Tuesdays and Thursdays. They're there. And then last thing before we got out of here, you were telling me before we started shooting tonight that Mariah Carey is a blight on human nature and her voice is like nails on a chalkboard to you. What did you mean by that? It's the Mental Defectives podcast. It's Milligram, Jerry with a G. Jeff is here. Cupofpurpose.org. Check them out. We'll see you next time. Peace.
He's always got to throw